The yearly meeting for many years as an administrative assistant. And in those days, I was also a volunteer on the committee, several committees. The one that I'm thinking of right now, did you get one?
Okay, thank you.
Was on Friends Conflict Resolution programs. And at the time, we were creating the mediation program model that is used by many community mediation groups. I was also on the Racial Concerns Committee, whose membership was mostly friends of color. People who were white were named to it. They would come to a meeting and then they would never see them again. So, after a while, that group decided we didn't need to be anymore. I have since seen a lot of the history about that time, and it confirmed something that I begun to suspect. I grew up in a family that believed it was anti-racist, and of course we had our own racism stuff because every person does. And for instance, when I learned when I was a Friend Select and was in 5th grade, and my sister was in 3rd grade, and she went to William Henry State, came home with the idea that they had slaves. I was absolutely indignant. What do you mean they had slaves? And I went, my mother was a member of Central Philadelphia meeting. And I went there and I said, why did we have slaves? Well, you know, that was the times. That did not satisfy me. And I asked that question forever. I'm still asking that question. And these days, I'm getting a much more realistic answer. I was at the FGC gathering. I went to a Quaker church for their worship on Sunday with my friend every day. And the pastor was an amazing man who gave this sermon, which I can actually send you if you're interested, talking about having heard the Native Americans at the New Yearly meetings, first or second or third meeting, Sierra Cascades, and a presentation about Indian, quote, Indian boarding schools, which a friend of mine who's Native American calls them, we should stop calling them boarding schools. They were not boarding schools. They were not. And his sermon, which is wonderful, and you should definitely read it, but what he says in there is, and he's quoting Joan, is the spirit that enabled Friends to think that this was a good idea was not the God and the Spirit that we like to think that we are following. So what does it mean? And I've taken that really seriously to think about when we say we are speaking truth, we are speaking from Spirit, what can we do to really, really think about where that's coming from and what it means? Well, that introduction I just gave you was not at all on a piece of paper notes. So that's just going to have to do. Yeah, I grew up in a family that lived, my dad was an anthropologist. He worked in colonialism in Nigeria, hoping to get out of the colonial thing. He'd grown up in segregated Texas. My mother grew up in New York. They both met when they were both working for the OSS, which is a precursor to the CIA during World War II. She was doing translations because she'd been brought up in France. Why am I telling you this? Because it shows I come from this very different kind of background. And I grew up at Lincoln University, an African-American HBCU. And so I had a lot of teachers around me, teachers who were students who became my friends. And I think one of the amazing memories I have is when I wanted to go, this was in 1963, 64, I wanted to go down south and work, do stuff down there. And he said to me, Joan, there's a lot of work you can do right here. And I've always remembered that. There's a saying you may remember from a bumper sticker that says, act locally, think globally, act locally, and that's really true. one has to be aware of what's going on globally and realize that the best way you can do some work is locally. So, hi, Mimi, you're late.
Just trying to sneak in. That's right. That's the one. That's
If you didn't bring a journal, you're welcome to have a piece of paper and a
Thank you.
And paper.
Thank you. And this thing with you.
So I've been told that everybody knows me, and I know that's not true. So I want you to tell me who you are, what brings you here, what your hope is.
Sit.
And then after we share the hopes, I want you to write down a concern that you may be coming with, a thing that you've noticed you might want to do something about. So who are you?
Oh, we're in there?
No, you're going to tell me your name and what your hope is. I'm actually supposed to write that.
One of us is supposed to write, yeah.
Hope from this workshop or in general?
This workshop.
Oh, okay.
This is
What's the name of this workshop? That's it. You put him on the spot and let him go first.
That's okay. I mean, comfortable situations are
You
like,
want to go first?
He's ready.
oh yeah, no, comfortable situations are good.
You okay with her in here?
So, I am Michael McConnell.
Michael McConnell. I'm going to repeat names because I probably won't remember them. I have bad hearing and a terrible memory. But I'll do my
No, I'm just not.
Joan, may I correct your English and say, I used to have a terrible memory.
No, I have. That is the truth.
But
God knows that is the truth.
I used to have a terrible memory for names, and I don't anymore. And part of it is not telling my subconscious that I used to
So, what do I hope you to get from?
When you look at the workshop and you decide,
Oh, yes. I actually really like that question. That's exactly what drove me here. Is I want to learn about initiation, or if that makes sense.
initiation meaning,
Like taking action, you said that sense. But how do you, or not how do you, but what would be the push? Make it very general to initiate.
perfect. Mimi, what's your name?
My name is still Mimi. And I'm just here because whatever Joan does is going to be important. And it's a serious subject, but we'll also have fun, I think. But it is important. And well, we led some workshops back in the day together. Yes, we did. So I'm here to learn. Always learn. There's more.
Sue?
I'm Sue. I was going to say I'm Fred Jones. You don't want to hear why I'm here. I didn't want to get wet on the ropes course. I didn't want to so I thought I'd do something inside.
Okay.
I'm Fred.
Fred, you look familiar. Have I met you?
Yes.
Tetra maybe?
Yes, you got it.
Well, see, my memory's not terrible.
And yeah, I didn't want to go on the nature walk.
You want to see a lot of reference here.
But hearing what this topic is, there's a lot of talk in Trent meeting right now about changing the whole makeup of who we are, and specifically moving it to people who are not Quakers, who are residents in the area, who would like to do things like singing and dancing and have social events that have nothing that we've ever done in our meetings.
So you're talking about making change?
Yes.
Valentina.
I am here because you are leading this workshop, and I know I'm going to learn something. And I am here instead of going to many other workshops that I would have loved to have gone to. Like the nature walk and the watercolor again. But no, I want to learn more about want to learn more about racial justice and what are the things that I do that are go against that. I just want to keep learning more.
It's really important to keep learning more, and really important to claim that as a value, I think, right? Margaret.
I'm here because she said, Joan's leading it. And Jack offered me a ride.
That's very nice.
Do you want to talk about what you hope to get out of it?
Frankly, I thought I was coming to a watercolor workshop. And that is how the spirit leads.
Okay. I'm Nathan Schroyer. I use we, us, they, him pronouns, and my name Nathan. I live on the Edgecote land. And I'm here because, as others have shared, I just was gifted to come here today. I also, what everyone else said, I came when I found out you were leading it, Joan. And I don't have big expectations. No. But my seriousness is that early on, something you shared, I was in doing work after Hurricane Katrina with neighborhoods and rebuilding a city and a whole coast and a whole a lot of people's lives. And there were people who were coming from elite places that we represent. And their teachers were saying one of the hardest things is that where they're going back to, these 15-year-olds who are coming down here to do service don't think there's any service for them there. Mm-hmm. And you said that. You said, this whole be local. And so I'm thinking, again, it's divine to be here, but that what you're going to provoke in me and us is a sense of the emerging moment that we're here.
Okay, emerging moment. I'm getting a little, what's the word? Wordy? Will I live up?
Yes, you will.
Hi friends, Brian Bachmore, Director of Character Engagement at American Friends Service Committee. All pronouns used. All pronouns used with respect are welcome. I tend to use he, him, which is welcome when used with respect. I am here because Joan and I got a chance to connect at the Friends Association of Higher Education, which was like an incredible event about reconciliation between friends and disinherited Indigenous communities. And I'm here all day just to kind of get in the vibe of the tri-quarterly community and hear what your concerns and leadings are in this group. I thought I'd be able to do that more effectively in this space rather than out in the mud or watercolor.
My name's Keith. I attend Mount Laurel meeting and I'm very involved with FQA, and I'm just here to display leads.
Are you the guy that plays the gorgeous guitar?
I play guitar, yes. Playing 345 in art room.
Say your name louder.
Keith.
You said Keith.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Yes, my last name is Collins.
I only will remember the first name.
Okay.
Yes, my name is Joan. I also attend a Laurel meeting, and I really have no expectation. I'm here to learn whatever there is for me.
Thank you. About expectation. And who are you and why are you here?
Yeah, Carlton Crispin. I'm mainly here because I'm filming, but also I'm looking forward to the whole thing. So,
Thank you.
yeah.
Expectation is one of these words that we're kind of primed to have. Oh, what's your expectation? I realized when my kids were growing up, the only expectation I had was that they would be healthy and we would be a good family, and that's it. And I wonder sometimes if when we have expectations, are we too easily disappointed later and then don't think about what we might have learned if we were open. So I really love that there's this openness here. And even when you set expectation, I'm assuming it's because you are having an openness to what we might learn together. We will learn together because any workshop I do is interactive, and I know I will learn from you. Hopefully you'll learn from me too. Anyway, so what I'm hearing is it's a time to learn. There's time to think about racial justice, how we can change things. I have no idea what that says.
Stay dry.
Stay dry. Yeah. Expectation and emergent moment. Mm-hmm. That's great. Now I need to go and look at my notes. It has been a long time, as I said, since I've done a workshop. Except on Zoom. Actually, I think the last workshop were you and I, when we did
At your meeting?
At your meeting.
Okay.
That was
That was way before COVID.
before COVID. And sadly, I'm never sure whether it had any effect on what happened in your meeting, but who knows? I need to vote, yeah. And so just as an ad, at the Yearly Meeting website, you can actually find either under PYM Addressing Racism or PYM Anti-Racism Collaborative. Either one will take you to the page that has a lot of information on it. So I will post the agenda here that I hope we will do. So we're going to, I didn't ask you to write down. Did I tell you? Ask you to write down the concern that you're bringing about maybe a specific thing, maybe more general, but something that you're bringing that you hope will focus on your, that we will get to later. So we've done hopes. We're going to talk about culture. We're going to have some reflection on that. I'm not sure what time it is, so I'm not sure we have enough time to do the one exercise, and I was a little worried because of the pandemic, how people are feeling about getting close to each other. So I might walk us through another way of doing that exercise. And we'll do some noticing about bias and disconnect, discomfort. We'll look at challenges. We'll look at what makes up power and agency. We will look at the challenges in discomfort and how to navigate. And then moving forward to the next steps. And in this area is where we'll get to those little green cards that you talked about. That's the agenda. Any questions?
No, but you asked about time, and it's
Yes.
almost 1:40.
And when does this end?
Yeah, okay. So you guys could be a pair, right?
Me and Sue.
In pairs. This,
Yes.
I was originally thinking of, it would be a long time to set it up, and we don't have time for that. Plus, it would be hard to do in this room. So we're just going to do it in pairs, sitting where you are, in a pair, however you want to do that. Some of you are already sitting in pairs. So I'm going to ask you a question. One of you will speak and answer it, and the other will listen, and then I will hopefully tell you when to switch, and then the other person will speak.
I guess we should speak quietly.
Well, yeah, unless you want to spread out a little more. The other thing you may or may not know is that I'm actually wearing hearing aids. My hearing sucks, even with hearing aids. It's better with hearing aids, but not great. And we have a wagging tail. So when I say the word, the person on the right will answer the question first, and the person on the left will listen. And then when 2 minutes are up, you'll switch, and I will try to keep track of that. Okay. The question is, or the thing to talk about, a story about something positive you remember about your childhood. Family, school, summer holiday, food, whatever. Now, be honest, was 2 minutes more than you needed?
Yes. That was
Okay, so
perfect. It could have been a little less, it would have been okay.
okay, I think I will reduce it so that we can make up a little for lost time. So the second question, actually I was thinking the person on the right could get up and move to another place.
Okay.
This would be sort of like
Hi, Margaret.
Yeah.
Hi.
I don't
so I enjoy your the second question now. Second question now. Sorry, I didn't get my thing.
Yes, go ahead.
So I'm going to give you 1 minute for this. 1 minute, and the person on the left will start. This is a story about a lesson you learned at elementary age. Think hard. All right, start. The person on the left.
Lesson.
So the next question, and I'm not going to ask you to move this time. We'll see what happens the next time. What was a holiday or event that you love or loved, and why? Are you ready for the next and last question?
Yes.
A time you saw something not fair.
Oh.
What was it? Whether or not you did anything about it, you might want to also add that the time that you saw something that was not fair. And what was that thing that you saw?
Who starts?
I feel like,
Good question.
The person in the middle.
The person on the right.
The person in the middle. I get it though, is that
So as
one
you
result
think
at a time.
about this experience of sharing,
Yeah.
you might
I don't know.
reflect a little bit on what your answers were, what you heard others say, and you might want to journal something new, maybe an aha, maybe something you noticed in your sharing that you would like to take note of. I'm going to give you like a minute to write it down.
So I know that we were talking.
So were there any surprises that came up? Were there any discomforts? Any thoughts that came up that you wanted to share?
A learning can be about, it can be like a realization. It might not be a positive learning.
Right.
A learning that someone can't be trusted or something's not fair or, yeah. It's not always learning like how to do something better.
Right. Yes.
Like we learn.
And learning about your own reaction. I remember my sister once told me a memory that she had about something that happened to both of us, and I hotly denied it. It was something I had done that sounded really awful. I was like furious. About a year later, oh my God, she was right. And it's like, oh my goodness, you know, you bury things, right? And it's a good thing sometimes to reflect about, you know, what might be there buried that you want to revisit and notice what you do that was not so great. It also is not the end of the world, and you can learn from it and move on. I, in fact, I saw the person and I begged her forgiveness, and she said, I have no memory of that. God. So we're going to talk about, what are we going to talk about? Okay, look at your notes. Yeah. Oh, you were supposed to have done it before this. Okay, never mind. Brainstorming culture. What does that mean to you, culture? I'm writing this down.
We're brainstorming.
Say that again.
We're brainstorming?
Yes, sorry, yes, brainstorming. Thank you, what a good word.
On paper, that's what we're.
So there are
I'm
cultures,
saying it down.
many cultures within cultures.
Well, that you're using the word to describe the word. What is culture?
Habitual action? Habitual action?
Let's put that down. What else?
It's tradition.
It's differences.
Tradition.
Traditions and differences, I'm sure.
Background. Background.
Background.
Norms.
Yeah, societal familiarity.
Norms. Did I hear norms,
Yeah.
backgrounds? I think I just misspelled norms. Background,
Generational.
generational.
I'm going to say culture can be loss. Loss.
Can be lost.
Families.
Memory.
Families.
Family, thank you.
Familiarity.
Familiarity. Interesting.
Geographical.
Geographical.
Patterns.
Patterns.
Yeah.
Racial.
Racial, she said.
Racial. Maybe.
Somehow education fits in there somewhere.
So these may be examples of kinds of culture. Right. Culture. I have this written down somewhere.
What is culture, Joan?
Here's what this says. And I think this is shared by everything that you said. Shared experiences, traditions, activities, arts, all of that. So think about today, maybe the cultures you are part of right now. Notice I said culture. Why did I say that?
Yes, because we adopt more than, yes, we personally adopt more than one.
Do you think so? Think about it. So what culture has shown up here? Well, yeah. What culture is shown up here?
Quaker.
Quaker. What culture will show up tomorrow?
Quaker.
Oh, it's Sunday. What about Monday?
Good point.
Quaker. Cool.
American,
American?
Of just work culture?
Aren't we part of our...
and two Canadians.
Into
Yeah, Canadians, Americans.
North American.
Yeah.
North American, right?
Family culture.
Family culture,
White dominant.
white dominant culture. Probably we are all pretty steeped in that, right?
Right.
Do we always understand how it shows up?
Can be unconscious.
Yeah.
Unconscious.
How do we feel when sometimes we realize it's showing up and we hadn't expected that?
Yeah, very
Uncomfortable.
Uncomfortable. So how are we supposed to behave when we're uncomfortable? What are patterns that we might have when we are not comfortable?
Avoidance.
avoidance.
Avoiding. You said something, Sue. Did you say avoiding?
Avoidance.
Oh, I thought you said polluting.
My imagination's running wild with that one.
So if we're avoiding discomfort, how does that show up then in our meeting? How does that show up in our interactions with people that we don't know very well?
Well, it's easy to just avoid speaking with them, or you just say something perfunctory.
Perfunctory.
But not really engaging because you feel uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Yes.
Feeling cold.
Yeah,
Cold.
Cold.
You come across as being cold or uncaring if you're avoiding.
even a little too logical at times to
And
justify that, or justify uncomfortable behaviors.
Yes.
Retreat into silence. Retreat into silence.
Yep.
Retreat into silence.
I wanted to say that was that's what my mouth said, but that's not what I would want to do. I would use the word embrace, but.
You would what?
Use the word embrace.
You would embrace the discomfort.
I love that.
I love that. Embrace the discomfort.
Definitely.
How can we do that? How can we embrace discomfort?
First acknowledge it.
Yep.
Acknowledge it.
Oh, yeah.
Not, do we have to say it out loud necessarily? Not necessarily, you know.
And not feel guilty.
First acknowledge it to ourselves.
And not feel guilty.
And not feel guilty.
Yes.
Oh, man. Yes. So,
No, it doesn't help.
one of the things I learned when I was beginning to do marshalling work on peace walks, which is an uncomfortable place to be if you're going to be walking with people. This was the nuclear freeze, and I would be walking on the edge to make sure that no funny stuff was going to happen. And what I learned to do was breathe deeply, stay calm, smile. They don't expect you to be smiling when you're marshalling, usually. And trying to make sure that if I'm seeing something that's like this, trying to breathe again, and telling myself, that person is really upset, and they think they have a good reason to. So I'm not going to let them upset me, because I want this to be a good relationship as we're walking down the street. That works really well in a lot of places, including uncomfortable conversations. I find I learn so much when I am in an uncomfortable conversation. I don't necessarily learn everything, and I might still do bad patterns, but it is one more way that I've been able to navigate through a discomfort, a conflict, and I want to step back for that in a minute. I'll get back to that in a minute. So that's something you may want to think about, and if you have any questions on that, I'm happy to answer them or try to. So I said conflict, but I want to step back a minute. How do we, friends, respond to disagreement? Aren't we supposed to be in unity?
Not that much unity. Not that much unity.
I like you. Disagreement. It came to me just recently. We talk a lot about being conflict avoiders, right? But the truth is, we're disagreement avoiders sometimes.
Oh, yeah.
We don't want to disagree. We want to agree. So when we are in a disagreement, is our purpose to hear the other person's point? Or is it to make sure they hear ours? It might be good to think about both, right? I'm going to say my piece, I'm going to listen to you say your piece. We might have a little back and forth, right? That's great, and you can navigate that. I was given the idea, which I think I'm liking a lot, that conflict comes when you actually want them to agree with you. So if I'm in a disagreement, okay, so that agreement, they don't have to agree with me. We have processes in our business meeting to help us when we do need to come to a decision about something. Do we all know that unity is not unanimity? Are we clear about that? Very often people come. What does that mean? That means I'm in a meeting for worship, for business. There's been a lot of discussion going on. I'm not quite sure I really know what the best is. But I hear that people that I trust and believe in are clear. So I may not really be unanimously agreeing, but I can trust, again, the community. The community is the entity that will be deciding and carrying that forward.
God will be. God, if they're working right,
Yes. But again, thinking about what the pastor's saying about how we are listening to God is something, that's where, I was wondering, I had all these words I wanted to make sure I brought up. Guess what word I'm going to say now?
Apple. No.
Humility. We don't hear that enough in Friends, do we? Because if we've read George Fox's journal, does humility come up? Not very much. And we don't really talk about, we're often about what we know is true. It was a surprise to me to learn that in the 1700s, there were congregations in New England of Christians, including African Americans, who were abolitionists. Oh, we thought we invented that. We did not invent that. And if you want to read the book, it's in the library. It's by David Swift, and I'm not remembering the name of the book, but it's a very interesting book. So now we're learning a little more about what we didn't know about ourselves. If you know, there's a book now about that talks about the Penn family owning slave ships. If you hadn't heard that, there's a book. And if the library doesn't have it, it's going to get it. So humility is something that we might pray about a lot, because I think that it will help us in our disagreements and help us in our business meetings and all that. So let's see, there's a bunch of concepts I wanted to make sure that we covered. A bias. So in the old bias awareness workshop, we had this great thing, we had isms and what the thing is and what the ism is. And I looked at that and I thought, but there's not an LGBTQI-ism. It's a different world, different language, but the ideas are still there. If you have a bias, what do you have?
Prejudice.
Prejudice.
Yeah.
It's actually, I'd say, one step below prejudice, because you have a bias for something, right? And you can have a prejudice for something, but we don't usually use it that way. So a bias is, think about your own self, take a minute, maybe write some things down of the things that turn you off if you see someone, or if you hear someone. What are the things that you know go, I don't like that? Because there are things, and you might need to pay attention to them. That has to do with assumptions. There's also, don't write on the green card, unless it's a different green card. there's lots of things to write on, but the card that has your concern on, I don't want it. I want it just to have your concern on it. I'm sorry.
Two sides.
And think about things that you might be impressed with. And be biased towards someone. Because now you might look at this and think, I wonder if any of that has to do with the white supremacy indoctrination I'm growing up in. Just a question, it might have nothing to do with that, but good to test, right? Is there something that I that affects me in a way that I had not noticed before, it relating perhaps to that. I had a dear friend who's African American, and we were at my house and we were washing the dishes. And I happened to see his profile, you know, the way the light can shine on you on the floor. And his profile looked like all those horribly stereotyped pictures of African Americans you saw at the turn of the century. And I was aghast. I had this kind of response. Oh my God. And I never told him, of course, but that was a shock to me to realize there were things going on in me I had no way of knowing. They were part of something else that was going on in my formation. It's just a good thing to know, right? Because you might think, oh, I'm just so good. One of the things, maybe, when we were doing anti-racism work in the 90s, people would come up to me and say, because my husband was African American, and my kids are African American, and so people would come up to me, oh, and you, of course, not racist. I'm going like, no, that has nothing to do with being racist. And then I didn't have the language that Kendi now has given us. So amazing. Kendi is the book that wrote, who wrote the book, How to Be an Anti-Racist. It is incredibly good. And there's one for every age group. I went to Target and I bought one for kindergarten, one for elementary school, and one for middle school. So they're out there. And they basically, he's trying to get people to stop having the knee-jerk response to racist as an epithet, but rather as a description of how we can act in ways that affect people of color and others negatively. Not so that we feel guilty, but so that we can actually learn what they are. And this does not require us to have an interview with our next Native American or African American friend to ask them all these questions about it. Because I think the best way to do that is to simply be with them and have a conversation. So culture, back to culture. Were we talking about culture? So what about gay culture? What about trans culture? What about, so I love folk music, and I imagine myself as the hippie I never was, but I was barefoot, and I did carry a guitar, which I didn't play very well. So, I'm a Phil Oaks guy. I mean, whatever. I love Pat and Sandy. So that's definitely part of my culture. Sleepy Hollow, who was talking about it at lunch today? Someone at the table talked about Sleepy Hollow, WXPN's Saturday and Sunday morning music, which is wonderful, awesome. And they don't play June Taylor enough, but that's okay. So think about that for yourself. What are those cultures? And do you know people who have had to hide their identity? And how do we support people who feel they have to hide their identity? Did you ever have a discussion with your mother who was sure that gay people shouldn't come out because they might get arrested? I did. She totally had friends who were gay. She was not anti-gay herself, but she was scared to death for their safety. She lived in England at a time when you could get arrested easily if they knew you were gay. So she actually, we had a long talk. We explained why it was a good idea to support them being out, so that if they felt they could, so that they could be part of a community that would be supported by other people. She was an Episcopalian. She had gone back from being Quaker to Episcopalian. And she worked hard in her congregation to make sure that there was a gay pastor that was hired. So, you know, it's the conversations you can have from a feeling, not just of it has to be this way, but to learn how to support people who may not be able to be supported well. I have several friends who were trans, and my first trans person I ever met in the 80s. Now, probably not the first trans person in the world that I knew. I didn't know any of the others were trans, but I knew she was. And since then, I've known several who are. So if this is a concept that you have trouble with, I would strongly suggest there be well, you tell me, what should there be if there is a problem in a meeting with people understanding about what that's about? What would help?
Is that you volunteering over there?
He said a committee.
Well, there's this great song by, does everyone know Greta and Jacobs? Oh my gosh, I gotta get you to, the Faith and Practice group from Bucks County back in the day.
I know that.
Yes, they've got a great song about committees. We gotta learn it.
Yes, let's do it. Let's do it. But you said, what can we do? I want to hear it. I want to hear more about it.
No, well, I'm wanting a conversation about this.
Yeah.
What can we do to support the idea of anything that is roiling our meeting? It might be climate change in some meetings. It might be being trans. It might even, there was a time when a lot of meetings were, thankfully, I think we're over that, the gay thing.
Yeah.
Okay, lesbian, no. I think we've gotten over that. I hope so.
Right.
I have somewhat of a little bit of an inkling of an answer for that, but it's not my own words, but it's something that I've used and I've cultivated in myself. And it's a principle that I've learned from others, which is, it comes from African Americans, but it's an idea that I think is really needed among friends, which is not throwing people away. I heard that said, and I thought about this, and I'm just going to go ahead and use his name because he's a well-known person, because I recently picked up a book by Charles Murray. He is a sociologist.
And total racist.
Exactly. Okay, fine. But he attends a Quaker meeting.
He does.
And I'm trying to use this as an example for myself as a liberating opportunity. Because what I recognize is that we're often asking ourselves how to bring people into our meetings. We might be asking that because our surrounding the meeting has become 92% people of color. Or we might be asking that because the people around our meeting are homogeneity, wealth, white, privileged. But in whatever sense we're asking it, I want to know, what am I not doing?
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm using that don't throw people away.
Thank you. That's very interesting. And of course that flies in the face of reading people out of a meeting. And does everybody know that what happens when you were read out of a meeting? Do you know what happened?
You can still come.
You couldn't go to business meeting. But you could go to worship. I didn't know that until Darby meeting, I think it was, in my quarter, had a huge number of people that read out, and they were doing research on that. And someone, maybe from Darby, maybe someone else, said that. I'm like, oh, that's not terrible. But so.
Oh, and I was just going to say, what about when a meeting asks someone not to come back? A meeting for worship.
This is something my meeting had to do. After a year of not doing that, and we had a very small meeting, and we were losing people who were coming, and Bill Tabor was part of our meeting at the time, and he had been listening to this was the famous person in the early meeting who who preached about Eisenhower. I don't know if you're all familiar, you're all probably too young, but anyway. And the thing about him that's so interesting is that a lot of what he said in a crazy way made sense. And that wasn't the issue. It was his manner and the fact that he would take up the space in the meeting so that we couldn't have worship.
Mm.
And so we wrestled with him. Bill would listen to him for weeks before and after meeting. And finally, we agreed that we needed to send him a letter and say, until you've gone away for a year, you may not come back.
Mm.
It really has to do with the care of the community. And again, the community is really important. Think of the community as one of the members of the meeting. It's that sense, not so much that it's good, but is it going to hold what is the hope of the meeting in terms of worship, in terms of relationship? And what does it have to do in order to be able to do that? So, not throwing people away. Very interesting. So when you have an organization, friends organization, that is trying very hard, for instance, to do good work, and there is friction between a member of the central committee and a staff person, and they keep not doing the thing that they have agreed to do. In some ways, you may have to not throw them away, but find the door, find a way to make a relationship work better, and if that doesn't work, suggest that they move on. Maybe make them move on, maybe disinvite them. So I'm running out of time because I'm not looking at my watch.
You have a half an hour
Oh,
yet
good. Excellent.
to be on time.
Yes. So assumptions are things that you may not realize you have. So if you know that I might have an assumption about something, it's always good to check it out. So when you have a thing that comes up, oh, why did that come up? Maybe I could journal a little bit about that. What could that? There's a process in Fifth Discipline that talks about left-hand thinking. So you write down the thought and you say, okay, what was that about? And you write down and you just keep doing that, and you might get to it. Might not have to write it, might just have to think it, but may have to play music and maybe it'll come. But think that it might be there and you might be able to find it. Okay, concerns, assumptions, identity. We talked about identity and assumptions. Concerns. So, you all have a little word on your little green cards. Would you like to? You don't have a word. Some of us don't.
Concern.
Oh, but some of us do.
Oh,
So, what are some of those words? Maybe nobody knows. Oh, I see you writing it down quickly now since you didn't do it earlier. Okay. That's all right. Okay.
So some of mine, I can be more specific now than what I wrote down. That I am being racist when I don't know it.
Oh, right.
Which I'm sure.
Absolutely.
Right.
Absolutely.
Yep. And but there's another really fun. That's okay.
So, thank you for that. That tagged me to. So, if you haven't read Kennedy's book, it would be really important for me to say,
read it.
You can be racist or anti-racist in anything you do, but you're not going to be a little racist, because that's just not it.
You're not going to be what?
You're not going to be a little racist. You're either, every time you're doing something, it either has an effect on racism or an effect on anti-racism. So every day I know I have effects on racism. I know that. And so when I think about that, and I look at that and think, what's the other option? There might be another option, but there might not be that I could think of. Well, maybe I could journal about that. Maybe I could figure out. One of the things that's really on my heart right now is poverty. I'm reading this amazing book, Poverty by America, Poverty by US. It was just reviewed recently. The guy who wrote it lives is a Princeton Matthew something, and it is amazing. He basically is talking about where poverty comes from in this country, and it's not necessarily from all the things we liberals love to talk about. You know, thankfully I did know some of the things they were saying. Like, yeah, it was a lot Reagan, and it was Clinton, and it was my daughter was a social worker in Manhattan during the 90s after Clinton closed up the welfare money. She was counting homeless men in Central Park, and I think that just did it for her. She just turned around and quit that. There's so much we could be doing, and if we learn what we don't know and how we might address some of these things locally, we might start making a difference. Poverty by America, Poverty by USA. It was really interesting how he identifies by us, not by someone else, but by us. So you know, reading something about it, taking a workshop. The Understand has an amazing workshop, Meeting 101. It's coming to Pendle Hill in the spring. You get an experience of being with a whole lot of different people, having a whole lot of different prompts that you can respond to, and you can learn about yourself, you can grow. It's just amazing. Right, Dee?
Absolutely, and it's not about guilt.
No, not at all.
About guilt.
Not at all. It's about affirmation. It's about knowing,
Yeah.
being. I mean, the thing how we be is totally a neo-noism.
Yeah.
Is there such a word in neo-noism?
Yeah, there's calories.
That's right. So think about that. It's not cheap, but it's worth it in your growth and in the growth of those around you in your meeting. So who else wants to tell me what was on their card?
Okay. So, coming into this class, I told you one of the things I wanted to, one of the things that brought me here was intention, or having initiative.
Yeah.
So, while we were talking about these specific isms and also different classes of prejudice and social dysfunctionality, my concern always related back to the self, which is also what I have in my card right here. And that's what I really like about this class, is that I think a lot of the things we discuss actually discuss more of the self and not necessarily the issue. So my concern was breaking through adversity with resilience and heart. I think that's my current conflict internally.
This is so important. I mean, this is what the bias awareness training was about. It's like, where you start with this work, you start with yourself. Mm-hmm. And in the bias awareness workshop, we would pair up and talk about a bias we had felt from someone. And then we would do some more stuff, and then we'd come back to that same person and do a bias that I acted against someone. Because they're both there. And you can do this with a friend. You can go, let's have a conversation, because I'm really noticing something and I wanted to do it with someone. Or you can journal about something you're noticing about, like, you know, the couple of things you might have noted about the turn-offs, the turn-ons you have. It's that kind of inner reflection that will help you understand where this is all coming from within you and strengthen you to be able to work through it with great discomfort and strengthening. Because, you know, it's like muscles, right? I know when I go in the morning, I'm supposed to, because I have this meniscus issue, I'm supposed to bring my foot up to my butt. It's not easy. But if I don't do that regularly, then my knee gets much worse. So it's, you know, it's that kind of pain. It's kind of like the discomfort stuff, very much.
It's kind of like peeling, you know, like peeling the onion, taking off all the stuff that we're not aware of. And so you're plugging the other's workshop, which is wonderful. And also, alternatives to violence is also wonderful in some very similar way. ABP.
Yes, and you do those too, and the people here know about them?
I don't know, we have an advanced coming up, which is the second part of 3 coming up in October. So that's for anyone that's taking the basic.
That Mount Holly meeting. That Mount Holly meeting.
Yes, that's October 20 and 22. Anyone who's taken the basic is welcome. If you haven't taken the basic, we're going to try to put one together.
That's a great idea. For years, I've never taken the basic, except the FGC introduction with Steve Angel, which was really cool.
That's right.
And then finally, I think Jorge did it, and so I did 2. I think I did all 3 with him. But yeah.
Well, we're taking names. We're keeping a list of people who want to do the ABP.
Yeah, we will check it. Yeah. I need to say that I need to leave at 5, so don't take it personally. Okay. I need to leave at 5.
Oh, okay. So what time is it now?
You have 20 minutes.
Good.
Okay.
So who has power?
I do.
Yep. She does.
Yes.
I have superpower.
What? That was such
So there's power and there's power, right? And there's a really cool, used to be a bumper sticker on my car with all these fishes. Oh darn, I'm going to forget it. It's about organizing. It's about like the big fish going for the little fishes, but all the little fishes gather together and they go after the big fish. Yeah, so it's all about organizing. And sometimes we get negative, well, speaking for myself, sometimes I hear negativity around organizing from Quakers, which I don't quite understand. But sometimes it sounds like they think it's not spiritual. I got news to them. Every single thing I have done has been from a deep spiritual place. And it may not look like your spiritual place, but it's my spiritual place and I'm claiming it. You know, I think about African American communities and the resilience and the amazing, amazing energy they have, despite all the headlines you might see about all the killing and all the stuff.
Propaganda.
Oh, just
powerful.
It just, you know, if they could bottle it. But it comes out of their own hard experience. Mm-hmm. And so, perhaps some of what our Philadelphia early meeting friends have not had is a hard experience. We came here mostly with funds, mostly able to do what we needed to do. And unfortunately, you know, even when we did the treaty with Native Americans, it was maybe more on the English model of what property was instead of the Native American idea about what property was. And we didn't know enough about our assumptions to ask, but now we do. So now we can really start learning and being more powerful. Agency. You know, this is a word that I just recently started hearing about people. You know, agency has always been like, oh yeah, the car agency or the, you know, whatever. But someone said something about, well, but where is your agency? I'm like, oh, I can be an agent of change. So how can we be supported to be agents of change? How can we support folks in our meeting who are out there trying to be agents of change? That was a rhetorical question, but if you had an answer, I'm fine hearing it.
It came from something you were saying a minute ago, but what it is if we have experienced work or organizing or other things that we want to, you know, words that we want to describe that are life-giving to us, then you naturally want to expand that. And so for me, agency is one way of describing that. Another way that I've heard lately is being proximate. And so getting in proximity to that which we want others to also experience.
So you think that gives us agency?
I think so.
It supports agency.
Exactly.
Yeah, I'm thinking about the agency that I clearly feel that I can just sort of write out a workshop that I may be able to give, and it gets accepted. That's I get agency from that. I get agency from my community when they say, would you please go and represent us? This is NAACP Eco Justice Working Group said to me, oh, the county needs citizens to be on a zero waste working group, advisory group. And I'm like, oh, sure, I can do that. But it was an opportunity, and it's, so agency is built with opportunity. So again, how are the ways that we can build agency in our communities with the folks around us who are dying to do things, and we just need to hear them and help them do that. Okay. And power, I have here, possession of control, authority, or influence over others. Agency, ability to take action or to choose what action to take. So those are two definitions that I can send you.
So can I just go back to, so agency is giving someone the power?
Yes, it's supporting their power to be developed, yes. I don't think you can give them power, but you can put them in a situation where they can use, and you can support that power.
Being supported, being listening.
Yes,
listening,
absolutely.
heard. Yeah.
Yeah.
And sometimes the key to social change is when the powerless find their agency.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
That's true. That's true. They take their power in some ways to that agency, and that happens a lot. Oh my God, thank goodness.
More and more. More and more.
Yes, oh. Anyway, so, I'm seeing my notes. When it gets hard, what supports us when it gets hard?
Humility. Humility.
Humility can, yes,
To be
if we remember.
right. To be able to acknowledge.
This is hard, say it out loud and then in the community. Right? So again, well, what does a community do?
And when I say community, I'm supportive community.
Supportive community, and so how to create supportive community is something to think about in one's meeting, elsewhere. Yeah. Did anyone here? Probably not. Okay, what's his name? On CBS at 11:30 p.m.
Kevin McCarthy. Were you talking about Kevin McCarthy?
No. Oh my God, I will never quote him as far as I can tell. He gets quoted too many times by journalists. I don't need to help him any. No, the night person on CBS, who's a riot, who's really. Pardon?
Not Jay Leno.
No, but one of his.
Colbert.
Yes, Stephen Colbert. If you know how to go to his channel or whatever and listen to his interview from last night with Jon Stewart.
Oh, wow.
Jon Stewart is so good. And I wasn't really listening to it. I was madly typing up notes and making sure I had all my stuff together and all. And I suddenly started listening to him, and I had to get up and go listen to him. And that place, you know how usually there's a background of clapping, you could hear a pin drop in what he was saying. And what he was saying was so much about this sort of stuff. One of the things he said was, they were talking about anti-Semitism, they were talking about one of the remarks that it was marked anti-Semitism by probably Kanye West, I missed that part. And Jon Stewart was saying, I don't believe that it makes any sense to try to stifle something like that. You have to be able to relate in some way to what's going on. How are you going to know if you say, oh no, you can't do that? And he said, and along the lines he said, yeah, anti-Semitic, yeah, Well, I'm called anti-Semitic because I support Palestinians in Israel. So it was just, it touched on some of the stuff we're talking about. So I put that out there to, in case you're interested. And the other person I would say that you could learn a lot from, if you don't know already, this is a confession. The PBS station I listen to or watch on TV, NJPBS Channel 23. Not WHYY in Philly. WHYY is okay, and they have a really good, WHYY did do a thing I was saying at lunch on the Underground Railroad, and which Progressive Friends, not Philadelphia Daily Meeting, in the Kennett area were involved in. Very interesting, and you can connect to it through WHYY's website. But there's a guy, I think also in HYY, I happened to see it on PBS, NJPBS, Baratunde Thurston.
Yes, from Sidwell.
American Outdoors. He's really, I learned so much. He's doing a state-by-state visit right now, and it's mostly environmental, but I'm learning from him some of the strategies he's using when someone that he really disagrees with does something. It's really, really, really helpful to hear that. And so I do not want you sitting around watching TV all day, no. But if you know that there are things to learn from some things, by all means go and look. And for heaven's sake, we don't have enough people who are reading books. I'm serious about this. I'm not just because I'm the library person. So, and I have two handouts that are totally not at all something we talked about, but that's why I brought them, because I knew we probably wouldn't talk about them. But they go to how do we act on things. If Bill Moyer, not Bill Moyers, but Bill Moyer, a wonderful activist person, who I believe was a Quaker, but I'm not sure, wrote this wonderful book, which is still good. And in it, there are 4 roles of social movements. There's the citizen, and he talks about what's effective and what's ineffective. The rebel, earthquake reaction team, effective and ineffective. Reformer, effective and ineffective. And change agent, effective and ineffective. So I have this for you to take if you wish.
Thank you.
Or I would just hand it out. The other thing I have, I want to say this before it suddenly is time to leave. Alicia Garza was the person behind Black Lives Matter. She has a book, The Purpose of Power. There's probably some good stuff in there. I haven't read it yet. Most of my books I haven't read yet. Really his sin. Yes, boycott, divestment, sanctions. The Middle East Collaborative, which some of us are part of, is working really hard to help people in this country understand the problem that's going on in Israel with Palestinians that has been going on at least since 46. And I was just reading something from a Palestinian woman from 1911, where it was still going on there, having to do with colonialism and empire in England, sadly. Don't be scared to read it. I was scared to read it because I wasn't sure. Was it going to be all about violence and upset? And it's not. I learned more about Palestinian mindset here, and it was much more informative than I had thought. So the other thing I wanted to have available for you is something called, some of you might recognize it, Continuum on Becoming an Anti-Racist Multicultural Organization. This is a presentation made at Daily Meeting during session at a very hard time in our Daily Meeting. We haven't gotten back to it yet. I'm hoping that our collaborative will be. But I thought you might like to get to know what it is, so that you can be knowing about what this work is about. It's about how we look as a community. Are we an exclusionary institution? Are we a club institution? These are all described. Compliance organization? Are we an affirming institution? Are we a transforming institution? Or are we fully inclusive, anti-racist, multicultural organization in a transformed society? I'm not sure we'll ever get there. It's a little bit like zero waste. But we're never going to get close if we don't start working on it, right? It's like climate change. Think what would have happened in Pennsylvania if in the 70s, when I was part of a group that was trying to get a bottle bill in Harrisburg, trying to get styrofoam people to have to put a price that would include dealing with the waste of styrofoam on the product that would have made it more competitive with paper. Never happened. That's where we are. So, do you want to end this one out too? I got you. So this is one that FGC is working on, Functional Conference. That's outside the work. And it's very interesting. Okay. So how did we do here? Did you feel engaged?
Oh, absolutely. More than I do in college. Where's that?
Were there questions you had that you would like me to hear and maybe answer? Or our conversation might help?
I'm curious where South Jersey friends see their meetings in this.
Oh, that's they shouldn't. Now, see, this is where I have a feeling they will need to sit and listen and think about it. But yeah, that would be a great exercise. You know, I mean, a couple of people saying, "Oh, where are we?
Yeah.
Yeah, and what could we do?"
That's a good, this is a good tool
Yes.
that I can take to my meeting for
Thank you.
discussion.
That's a good question.
Yeah, it's a fantastic tool. I hadn't thought about that until you just said that, so.
Oh, thank you. I was assuming, of course.
I've seen this, I've done it, I want to look at it again myself, but to take this to my meeting and talk about it together.
I think that's a perfect reason to have it.
Yeah.
And Sue and I were at a workshop recently where I think this tool is part of what they organized for the workshop, which was really helpful because they broke it down to personal stuff, which was really, really, really interesting.
Crossroads came and did an audit of racism and anti-racism at the seminary I went to. We used this tool a lot.
Oh, excellent, good. Crossroads, gosh, I haven't been there in ages. Is that where your meeting is?
My home meeting's in Florida.
Oh,
I went to seminary in Chicago, and I think the Crossroads organizers are from Atlanta.
Oh, you're not meeting.
Meeting.
You see the citation at the bottom?
Somebody left us out.
So, just so you know, I actually love doing workshops. I've done workshops on anti-racism, bias awareness, conflict, hymn singing.
One of these things is
Faith and practice, yeah. So if you ever think your meeting would like to do something, be in touch.
Bias awareness is kind of like a way in.
Right, now did that work this time? Because it was a very small part of what it was, because I'm very aware of the changes and I'm trying to sort of figure out what makes sense in terms of that. So did the bias awareness piece work, or could I do more on that?
Well, there was a lot of, I felt like you were trying to get through it in the time.
Yeah, that's true.
And there were some things I would have liked to say, tell me more about that. And I didn't, because I knew you were trying to get through.
Although I think it does help with the example that the workshop you had us do, which was to find a bias that's both positive and seemingly negative. I think that does help demonstrate the duality of it.
Yeah.
So that helps with the self-awareness aspect of my.
And I never said the self-awareness, so the fact that you brought it up is really, really important, because that's what I learned when I took part in that training at the very beginning. It really does start, and I've tried to tell this to people, you know, but how can we, it really needs to start with one's own reflection on one's own. That's what got me into this when my kids were going to school, and it was a regular school, and it wasn't going well, and I was like, how can I help in this? And it was really all about just getting real about how to talk about race and racism in ways that would not have everyone screaming and running from the room, which they still did sometimes. But yeah,
it's the approach more than just the execution.
Really, and so the journaling helps. Talking with someone helps. Not being afraid of discomfort. When I was lucky enough to go to Kenya in '91 with Friends of World Committee Triennial, the first night it was like pouring buckets. It was pitch black because all the electricity had gone out in Chiricahua. And so we got out of the bus, and I went right into the mud, slid right into the barbed ripped my favorite skirt, and my sandals, which I should never have been wearing those sandals, were a mess. Well, they all turned out fine. I mean, the skirt is still sitting in my closet. I haven't worn it. But it was wonderful to be there and just to start in that place, which was sort of scary for me. I have not been out of the country since I was 3. So, and as an adult, I've not been out of the country except to Canada. No, I haven't been to Canada yet. So, yeah, I'm very much a homebody. We moved a lot as a child, and I did not like that. So, yeah. So this was hard for me, but it was wonderful. It was that was such an important trip. So something that's scary. Think about why it's a good idea for you to do it, and I don't mean something stupid. I mean, like, you know, yearly meeting, called me up and said, would you go to this Friends World Committee? We think you're the person to go. I'm like, really? I talked to Ed, and he said, go. So I went. I'm glad I did it.
Yeah, right. Just gotta go.
So if you have any thoughts, you hopefully can have my email from Bentina. I'd love to hear from you.
And Mimi. Or Mimi. I have your email.
Oh,
Mimi also has your email.
Right.
Yep.
I have your email.
Anybody else?
And you're on the Pendle Hill attendance list, Joan?
I'm on who?
Pendle Hill. Are you on Pendle Hill's attendance
I have
list?
your address anyway.
Oh, yes. And I emailed you.
Yes. Of course. I have to look it up on the list rather than look it up on an email. Yeah, right.
So I know we didn't start with a moment of quiet and grounding, and we probably should have. I always forget to do it at the beginning, but I would love to do it right now.